how many have been to the Black Hills? Let's see. 1, 2. Anybody else been?
I took
Flying over the kind. I did a helicopter trip from Michigan over the Black Hills to Seattle, Washington back in the mid-80s. It was treacherous.
Well, the Black Hills are out there in South Dakota, and it's, as you probably know, very sacred land to many of the Indians out there, especially the Sioux. That's sacred ground. But somehow they let Borglum, the carver of Mount Rushmore, go ahead and do his thing. By the way, speak up if you have any ideas or questions. But Borglum wasn't too sure at first, but he studied and figured, well, maybe he could get a few men out of the granite up there. Now the question arises, why the Black Hills? You'd think right off that there'd be a patriotic reason. Put these famous men up there, and it would be a real credit to the country. Does that make sense? That'd be a good motive?
Yeah.
But you know the real motive?
It has something to do with the geography, didn't it?
That it was
The
granite.
hills themselves?
And it was what?
Granite.
Granite.
They could carve.
It was just to encourage tourism.
Oh.
One bright salesman got the idea.
Yeah.
All these people going by, we got to figure out some way to get them in this area because it's a beautiful area, and it worked.
Yeah.
I guess
It
not.
worked. Now there are millions, aren't there, every summer? Colossal. Let's see, how can we picture it? Well, Washington faces outward, and then to his left,
Jefferson.
Tanya knows.
I don't know the order.
I think it's
Jefferson, I think.
Jefferson,
Second,
and then
Teddy.
Teddy's in the background, and then the fourth one is
Lincoln.
Franklin.
No,
Lincoln.
Lincoln. So they're the
Now, I never
four.
could understand why they didn't follow in chronological order. There must have been some reason
Yeah,
why the face of the mountain couldn't do it.
yeah. I think it had to do with proportions. And as they carved, I understand, they had real trouble, like with, what's his name? One of their noses, as they started carving it, it began to crack. There was a vein in there, so they had to move that slightly. So they encountered all these problems, and they had a little challenge too with Teddy's glasses.
Yes.
Aren't they? They look so real. But I mean, just think, doing this on a huge scale. Why, you were not this room, but about 600 feet high, I think it is. Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm shooing a fly away from
You feel like carving, do you?
you. Just ignore it.
Oh, well, it must have been some job, but this is the reason. And of course, the land is sacred because of treaty in 1868, when the Americans accepted the treaty that they would not really hurt this land, and the treaty still holds to this day. Now, before we get into the four characters, there are two movies that have emerged as focusing on this whole area, and you think of them? Two movies that have helped make the area
I
famous.
can't think of the title. It had James Mason and it was a spy story.
Okay, you're thinking of Hickox. Yeah,
But I can't think of the
Was
title of the movie.
Northwest. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, that's the one.
It's been on so many times, and what's his name, the producer, what's his name? The movie producer. Well, he's the one that faked a lot of the background to produce North by Northwest. I forget the actors, maybe you remember better. But it certainly drew it even further into the limelight. But amazing how he had the characters crossing the faces way up there in the movie. What was his name, the English producer?
Cary Grant was in that movie.
Hmm?
Cary Grant was in that movie.
Yes, he was.
Yes.
He was.
He was selected to be eliminated, I guess, because they thought he was a spy, but he happened to stand up at the wrong time when this other man's name was called.
I don't remember the story, but somehow,
Well, anyway, he was involved with the, her name? Eva St. Marie. She
But-
played the woman.
I don't remember, but evidently by the Englishman doing that, it brought the
Was
film
it
into
Alfred
the limelight.
Hitchcock?
Hitchcock, there's the guy, okay. And the second movie that should come to mind is Dances with Wolves,
Oh, yes.
Oh, I saw it.
because this really treats with the heart of the Indian sentiment in the territory. That was a beautiful movie. And I guess all those things help to soften up the barrier that exists very often between the red man and the white man. Okay, sometime we'll go further into the carvings themselves. There are four. There's there's a stone mountain, which you never hear about, but one of the greatest in the country. I'd like to include in that little talk sometime the Old Man of the Mountain.
Oh, up in New Hampshire.
And I've lived longer than the Old Man of the Mountain. So I'm pretty proud of that. To outlive the Old Man of the Mountain. You all know the Old Man, don't you? Yeah. What was it, about 5 years ago he died?
Yeah,
Fell down.
It fell down.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he lost his,
I just used it
lost his
figuratively.
face. He lost his nose.
He lost face.
it expired.
Okay, so let's imagine that each of these guys is speaking out and try to listen as to what they might say. And as I listened for George Washington, I heard from my history certain things. What do you hear as you face Washington? What would he say today?
Probably, I was only doing my job.
Oh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Did he say, avoid foreign entanglements? Was that
Yes.
him?
No treaties.
No
He said,
trees,
avoid foreign entanglements.
Yes.
no trees, all right.
Let's bring him back.
Well, he certainly was our leader, so you could make a lot of his leadership. But I think as I listen, I'd hear the word loyalty. This is a new country, gentlemen, and I think you should put your all into it. Be true to the United States of America. We're brand new. We're 13 new babies, and we need to pull together or we're going to sink. Now, he was thinking when he said that of many who turned out not to be true. And it's amazing how many spies and deceptionists there were at that period. Amazing. The British, the Indians, the French, they were all conniving and spying on each other. And Aaron Burr, as we've learned in our history, is one of the most complex of the spies. He's also a murderer because he shot Hamilton, and after he did that, he went to England and then came back and ended up going west because he felt so guilty. But he got away with the murder of Hamilton, as you know very well. But he was thinking of someone like Aaron Burr, who was not faithful or loyal at all. All he wanted to do was carve out a piece of Western United States for himself. That's what Burr wanted to do. And he gathered about 100 men and tried it, but he failed. So he goes down in history as a real traitor. I don't know if you recognize William Temple. That ring a bell? Anybody?
No.
That's Benjamin Franklin's son.
Oh, yeah.
Benjamin Franklin's son, yeah. He got around, Franklin did, between going to France and here. I'm not sure if it was out of wedlock. But William Temple was another spy, and he was always working with English. He'd collect the letters, the epistles, and then study them and pass them on to his English helpers. He became governor of Georgia, by the way. He got to be that important. I think Washington was thinking about good friends like Marquis de Lafayette. You remember him in history? Marquis was so faithful. He used to spend his money to buy the shoes for the men and clothing, food for the Americans. He was a Frenchman, died Frenchman, but he wanted to help the Americans, and he did. And as you know, Washington ended up what's the word? Not baptizing. He took Lafayette under his arm. What's the word?
He sponsored him?
That's a strong word.
Adopted.
Adopted, yes.
Oh.
Yes, I'm sorry why the mind slips once in a while. Doesn't with you, though.
You're in good company.
We're all the same. We cannot put
Did you say he
it
adopted him?
Pardon?
What did you say, he adopted him?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
I
really?
didn't know that.
Yeah, they were such good friends, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he loved Lafayette. Yeah.
Lafayette's name came up actually in the course of this whole Parisian tragedy about, the French being our oldest allies, and his name surfaced with all of that
Yes,
business.
very good. Yeah, the French did help us a lot. In fact, they were the ones who trapped the English were in Yorktown, wasn't it? We owe a great deal to the French. And, of course, they sent us over that big thing.
Statue of Liberty.
Statue of Liberty, yeah. So we owe an awful lot to the French. Okay, the second guy we're looking at is Lincoln. And the big question for the carver here is, shall I have a beard or shall I not? Shall I bother putting a beard on? I think he ended up with a beard, didn't he?
Yes, he on and off with the beard.
On and off with the beard. Yeah.
Depends on the photograph.
But it's amazing the trouble they went into with all the carving. As you know, they'd hang on the side of the cliff and put the pieces of dynamite in there. And they got, I guess the Chinese especially had a lot of gumption. But Lincoln, what's coming out of his mouth as you look at the mountain? Wish we had a picture of the mountain.
I know it.
You have a picture? Pass it.
Can I pass that around? See, technology.
Oh.
So Lincoln is the next guy, and what do you think he would present as his central teaching?
Perseverance. Yeah, preserve the
Perseverance.
union.
Perseverance, that's a good one.
Unification?
What?
Unification of the North and the South?
Oh,
Yeah, the
unification, yes,
Acceptance.
very good, yeah. Any other ideas what Lincoln might uphold or?
Women are created equal,
Yeah.
Men,
That is a
yeah.
Great picture.
equality.
Oh, yes.
I've never been there.
Yeah, those are all good ideas. I think I agree with this gentleman here that his main burden was oneness in the country. He wanted the country to be one. He wanted union, and anything at the price of. That's a good one. There they are. Oh, that's good. Okay. There's Washington. Okay, we're talking about Lincoln.
As far as-
Now, I brought a little bit of the House Divided speech. That's the one that was so effectual in Congress. John, you want to read this paragraph here? Nice and loud now. Be Mr. Lincoln.
If we could first know where we are, whether we are tending, we could better judge what to do and how to do it. We are now far into the 5th year since a policy was initiated with the avowed object and confident promise of putting an end to slavery agitation. Under the operation of that policy, that agitation has not only not ceased, but has constantly augmented. In my opinion, it will not cease until a crisis shall have been reached and passed. A house divided against itself cannot stand. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the Union to be dissolved. I do not expect the House to fail, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward till it shall become alike lawful in all states, old as well as new, north as well as south. Here we no tendency to latter condition. Have we no tendency to latter condition?
What did he say were the alternatives, that last paragraph? Extinction?
Well, he says,
Extinction or going on all over the place. Is that what he said?
yeah, or, well, he says, that is in the course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward till it shall become like lawful in all states, all as well as.
I'll say, boy, a lot has happened since then, since he uttered those few words. But it is oneness, union that he wants. No house divided, and I think personally, as we all think a lot about this ISIS business, as to how to attack it and handle it, I feel the best technique is unity. Sticking together fearlessly, standing up to them as best we can. And I think this is part of the house divided spirit that lurked in Lincoln's mind, because he was thinking about the Civil War and the thousands that had been killed. And so we're stressing, I think, here the importance of staying together and making good things happen out of unity and out of oneness. That's the lesson that I hear from Lincoln. The third person is TR, and that's Teddy Roosevelt. This guy is really, you can't read too much about Teddy Roosevelt. He is, what do you think? What do you think? Anybody?
He was a showman.
Before I get started.
He was a showman.
He was a showman?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you say that?
Because he had the personality, I guess, to lead.
That's good. That's good. He had the personality. What a personality. I feel as strong as a bull moose. That's what I'm always saying. I feel as strong as a bull moose. And he went around like a bull moose, didn't he? With his big shining teeth, riding all over the place, standing up for Teddy Roosevelt. But here again, it was always the USA that was first. It was always the USA. Well, at times it was Teddy.
Yes.
But behind him was the USA. He's the man. Remember the saying, "Speak softly,
Carry a big
Carry a
stick.
big
carry a big stick."
And it works in the classroom.
And it worked. It worked in his office as president. By the way, he started up from the bottom. Police commissioner, up to governor, up to assistant of the Navy. And boy, that's when he shook the foundation of America, when he started building the Navy up with Thomas Maine, a great advocate of the Navy. But it was then that he began to show what the United States should look like. So one stick he used was against capitalism or trusts. And you'll find this in your reading of him. He hated the trusts. He hated the conglomerations of wealth that had been created in the Gilded Age. It's the Gilded Age, the late 1800s, when the factories were growing, the corporations were growing, America was growing. Mark Twain hated because he saw how shallow it was. But it's the Gilded Age, and this is what he was conveying.
Now, was that the time when they didn't have an income tax?
Yeah, that's true.
You got me, I don't know when
I
that's.
think so.
There was before income tax, yeah.
Yeah. So
I
it
know there
really
was a big depression there about in '93. We've had our depressions through the
Yeah,
years.
it was 93.
Income tax
It was
came
one
in the early
98.
part of the income tax, I think, came in the early part of the 20th century.
Yeah, I
Of
think
the
so.
20th century.
Right.
You know.
And I have an interesting aside on Teddy Roosevelt.
Go ahead, tell
He
us.
wrote his autobiography, so it goes to the printer. And the printer ran out of one letter, the capital I. So they had to have extra, what did they have, those little pieces of lead in those days?
Yes.
Yes, he had to have an extra supply of the capital letter I in order to print the pages. That's all.
We ran out of
The capital
I did this, I did that.
I did this, I did that, and I did something else.
That's
But I
good.
think the story is true because it was
That's
authentic, yes.
You know what he wanted, in line with your selfishness streak, what did he want? Very, very, very much. He almost wanted to buy it, he wanted it so much.
Well, he wanted to be re-elected president, but
He wanted-
he was his own worst enemy
But
on that.
what did he want from San Juan Hill?
Puerto Rico, he wanted Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, Cuba,
Yeah,
Cuba.
the Caribbean?
Yeah.
He wanted the Medal of Honor.
Oh,
More than anything, he wanted the Medal of Honor.
and they
He
didn't
talked-
give it to him.
He talked to some of the leading men there. He didn't get it. His son ended up with it
Why is it?
in the next World War, World War I. But TR did not get the Medal of Honor, in spite of all his egotism, selfishness, call it what you will. But he was that kind of guy. He kept you guessing, and he was always into something. As we're seeing here, he's against the banks. He's shaking the stick, then he shakes the stick at conservation, because he sees how careless people are getting with the land that they own, and how fast the good land is shrinking. By 1890, he knows very well that America has shrunk to the point where it's sold out. Technically, historically, the United States is sold out by 1890. And it's no wonder that they began looking to other countries, namely to Cuba, to Guam, to Puerto Rico. See, it's the Monroe Doctrine, the Manifest Destiny Doctrine that's spreading more and more. Tell me about the Manifest Destiny. You've had some of that in high school.
Yes, we did.
Manifest Destiny.
Well, it was
Manifest.
the right to move westward and claim land, wasn't it?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Manifest means evident.
Evidence
Evident. Destiny,
is what you're
It's a
going to have to
control.
do.
destiny is beyond your control, like, okay. And that's what they figured with Manifest Destiny, that the American had the right to press westward any way he wanted. But he got to the point where that wasn't enough. He wanted to go north and take Canada. He wanted to go south and take Mexico. He felt justified in doing this according to the Monroe Doctrine. And that doctrine really helped save South America, because it was being threatened by so many foreign invaders, the British and the Spanish and the Italians. Okay, so he used to stick against the trust, against conservation, save the land, we're gonna run out, and he did create a lot of, the national forests.
And the state forests and the whole
Do you
thing.
know which ones specifically?
Trying to think, it's in,
I'll bet the big ones
in Nevada and in Utah. is-
Yosemite.
And then further, yeah, Yosemite was one of the early ones, and, I think.
Zion.
Then
he did
Zion was later on.
Zion.
But there's, I think, up toward the Dakotas and up there fast, because he spent a lot of time when he was grieving the loss of his wife and daughter. They went to, he went, I think it was Montana,
Montana.
and he had a ranch, and that's when he really got the bug to preserve land. And,
That was Dakota, by the way, where he worked around.
Yeah, and, a lot of areas in that, in the upper west and in the middle of the upper west, you know, Nevada, California, Dakota, Utah, you know, that whole area is where there's spots. Every place you go, there's a sign
Yeah,
that
yeah.
gives you the year.
Quite a guy, but you can't read too much about him because you'll learn something different about his character. So, he used the stick, to summarize, on the truss. He used it on, toward conservation. He used it in the immigration battle. This was the time, remember the end of the 1800s, when the immigrants started coming in by the hundreds, by the thousands, by the millions, more and more. And what a job he had. You think modern presidents had their hands full. Look at what he went through. Very tough times. And with the immigrants, he had to take a stand. He tried to make it clear that he didn't want hyphenated Americans, you know, Italian American, French American. I want Americans, period. And that's a darn good slogan.
Oh, it's still hyphenated.
Pardon?
Afro-American is still around.
Mhm.
Afro-American is still,
Afro-American, yeah.
still around.
Yeah.
But that's
well,
relatively new in the span of time, that's relatively new. And they're getting away from that a little bit now.
That's a whole new bag, that immigration. The bag gets bigger and bigger. But as we said before, this is why, as America felt that it had filled up, just think all the way from the Atlantic Pacific, from Canada down to Mexico. They claimed they were all filled up, so they go for Cuba, they go for Alaska. Let's see, Alaska, 1869, was it Seward?
Seward, yes.
About in the 60s. And we got them. And the question is, what was our motive? And they're still arguing this. And it's the same dilemma that faces us in modern times, facing the question, why are we expanding as we are? Or I don't know, should you call it expanding? Are we trying to expand? Are we trying to transport democracy around the world? You know, this spirit that's into us. I don't know what it is, but it got into them with the Monroe Doctrine. Go ahead. What do you think? You think our modern spirit is genuine? It's right? We're going in the right direction?
Seems like we've shifted from the manifest destiny a little bit to, more like own nothing, control everything.
Oh, nothing.
Yeah, we don't really wanna own anymore, we just wanna control it and make the profit out of it.
Gee, I hope not.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
We've got a lot on our hands with ISIS and that Muslim war, I think that's gonna, my personal feeling, I think that's gonna go on and on. I think of Russia and communism and Nazism, they were isms, but they were not religiously grounded. This war is Muslimized, it's religiously founded and grounded. And I think when you have a religious component, as strong as it is in Mohammedanism, that you got a real fight on your hands. It isn't an ism. It's a religion that's trying
A lot of
to.
World War II was like that too.
The what?
A lot of World War II was like that. It wasn't any upfront position, but it was the secondary. I mean, Hitler wanted to control all of Europe, and then he wanted to cleanse it.
Mhm.
We have the same thing in the Middle East with Turkey and the Armenians. And all those countries in the Middle East have always been at war with each other, because they're all tribes. They're not really countries. We made them into countries, and they never were.
Yeah.
And when I say we, I'm saying the Western world.
Mhm.
And you can't do that. You
But
know, it's not their
those
life.
blocks were not religious, were they? The Nazi bloc was not religious.
Well, he went after everybody that wasn't
It wasn't.
him.
Yeah.
What vigilance?
But we're dealing with something very, very dangerous. Okay, we've gone from Washington with his loyalty to review, Lincoln with his oneness or union, that's the most important thing. TR with his capitalism and carrying the big stick. Don't forget that the Carver's Verdum, where he was a Scandinavian, and he had a son, and his son carried on when he didn't finish this statue. His son's name was Franklin, I think.
No, Lincoln.
Lincoln, that was close.
I think it's sad that he didn't get to see, to finish it, don't you?
And what?
I think it's sad that he didn't get to finish it.
I know. But you know, read his life. Oh, it's exciting. This whole bag is so rich because it links with the other sculptor of the Statue of Liberty. So it brings you into connection with all these great men that, okay, Thomas Jefferson, he's number 4. Now what do you think he stood for? That's easy, isn't it? Thomas Jefferson.
Expansion.
Expansion, okay, that's one.
Yeah.
Liberty.
He was the first one.
Personal liberties.
Liberty, I would
Yeah,
think.
personal liberties and personal,
Yeah.
I don't know if liberties is the right word.
What did she say?
Personal
Liberty.
rights are,
Liberty.
Personal liberty.
personal rights are, yeah.
That's good. That's good, yeah, personal liberty. Any other ideas? Connie, you didn't tell us about your visit there.
To Mount Rushmore?
Yeah, we wanted to hear about that.
Okay. Actually, I've been there twice. The first time was kind of interesting. We'd driven our son out west to go to college and thought we would leave Idaho and stop somewhere in a hotel before we got to Mount Rushmore, but there isn't one.
No.
So-
Ah.
But in hindsight, we got there early in the morning as the sun was on all their faces,
Mm.
which we would not have seen had we gone any later in the day. And then I went back a few years later, and we went on April 15th, and it snowed. So there was snow on all their heads. And it's a beautiful setting, the walkway. Who else said they'd been there? Anybody? They've got all the flags that line the sidewalk as you go up to it. And they do things at nighttime this summer. I didn't get to see that, but I've heard about productions that they do with lights on the mountain and on the faces. And then I guess we're gonna talk about Crazy Horse, right? That was very interesting to me too. It's right on the bottom, you've got Crazy Horse at the very bottom. How
About the what?
Crazy Horse.
Crazy
Yeah,
Horse,
I
just
like that.
briefly.
Okay.
Go ahead, did you see Crazy Horse?
Yeah, and how slow the progress is because they won't accept any government help. They wanna pay for it privately. So, it's gonna take a long, long time because they've got a picture of what they wanna do. It's a horse with an Indian on it with a full headdress. And they've got a little portion of that carved already, but I don't know if I'll ever see it finished.
But why did they pick that statue, that pose? It's let's see, he's got his arm out, I don't have a picture. He's riding a huge horse, And I think that spans 500 feet. Can you imagine? A horse and the rider, 500 feet, or maybe more.
Is this a freestanding statue, or is it carved into the side of the mountain?
It will be, but it's gonna take a long time, I think,
It'll
till
be
they
in the
get it
mountain?
carved out, yeah.
It's the same
A
type of thing.
family's trying to do it privately,
Yeah.
and it's a very interesting museum.
Who are the carvers?
The carver.
There've been different carvers doing that.
Yeah,
people that-
Borglum took the,
Borglum,
he took the Mount Rushmore, and then his son had to finish it. Tandra's speaking about the other statue, and that was done by, Wolowski? Yeah, Zablowski. They're all, Barnes, Zablowski, and he's still working on it, running out of money, I understand. The other one, Stone Mountain, that was started by Borglum also. I'm not sure if somebody else took that over. But Borglum really got around. We'll go into that more in the future when we dig a little deeper about those carvings. Okay, Jefferson, you gave us some ideas. Well, that's not what
Education.
Jefferson said.
Education.
No.
He started the
That's
university.
not what he wanted to report, so you all failed on
Sorry.
it. He put down the three things he wanted on his gravestone,
Oh,
just like you should do when you die.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
So that's one of yours?
Well, that's, you said three things, so that's my guess, life, liberty, and the pursuit of
No,
happiness,
but
because
let me tell
he
you
helped to write that.
Let me tell you them,
And I'm wrong, so.
he had three things he was proud of, and that's all he wanted on his stone. Number one was the Declaration of Independence. He felt that was very, very important because it freed the Americans. They had been held captive for so long, and he wanted to free our resources, whether they were human or natural, so that they could fully bloom. He thought of all the immigrants who needed to be developed and to grow. He thought of our rich country with all the coal and oil, mineral resources, and those were free now, and they were free for the United States and not for Britain. Guess what his second wish was? His second desire had to do with the Statute of Virginia for religious freedom. Because freedom was such an important factor in those days, religious freedom. And he's famous for saying, I don't care if you have 15 gods. I don't care if you have 20 gods. That's your privilege to worship as you want. So he felt that was very important, that every man be able to worship as he would. And his third wish was for the erection and establishment of the University of Virginia. I suppose because he felt that that was one way he could spread a lot of these nice ideas.
So all this is engraved on his tombstone?
This is all that's engraved, those three things.
Now, just the words that are engraved, or is it a replica of the statue?
I don't know if he made the statue, but that's what's there, Declaration, got them pointed, 1, 2, 3, just those.
what's
just
the
those
third
three.
one again?
The third one is the
University.
father of the University of
University of
Virginia.
Virginia.
And look at what it's become.
free education.
Look at what it's become.
He's still working on it.
Okay, so that's my, our response to the four men, and hopefully that's how they feel. Now, there are four. I don't know why they picked only four, why Berglund picked four. I guess he felt that those four encapsulated best the spirit of the United States of America. As far as the growth of the U.S. was concerned, its development, its importance. So I raise the question now, if we were to introduce a fifth one, who should it be?
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt.
And Franklin,
Yeah.
Franklin.
yes, I would say the same thing.
Which Roosevelt?
Yeah,
Franklin, Eleanor.
Okay, yeah.
Eleanor.
Eleanor?
Yeah.
Gotta get a woman up there.
Mrs. President, that's a good one.
That's interesting.
How about Jimmy Durante with his big nose? Any other ideas? If you had number 5 up there, there's no room,
There's no room, that's the other thing. That's all there was room for.
but if there were, maybe if they squeezed me in a little bit, maybe it's. But if there were, just who do you think should rank 5th in American prominence?
I think Roosevelt probably.
Yeah, I think it's really a toss-up between Franklin or Eleanor. Maybe they should do a special statue with THEODORE.
First
Absolutely.
ladies.
Because one dealt with one group of things and the other dealt with another group of things, and together, they,
You
they,
grew on
they, they
Johnson
made
and
more,
all those other
changes.
leaders,
Absolutely.
Eisenhower and
Yep.
some of those great helpers.
No question about it. In my
Eleanor,
mind.
first ladies.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, that's what I
Only
believe
Madison.
too.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's what I believe, yeah. Because he was so great during
The Depression.
during the war. What he went through. At Pearl Harbor, look at the load that must have been on his shoulders. And then,
I'll never forget that speech.
Didn't PBS do a great job on the Roosevelts?
Yeah.
The
Yes.
series that they did, I
Yes.
thought that was
That was
fabulous.
great.
we had a nice session here too on it. We had a full house that day.
Yeah, that was
We
interesting.
used the full thing.
but
Okay,
by the way, there's, on PBS, if you go into PBS, they have a series called The American Experience.
Yeah.
And if you have access to a computer, you can look up the older ones and watch them. And they have one about Mount Rushmore, all about how it was carved and everything else. And they have some actually
Rushmore?
film, and they actually have some film clips. The newsreel stuff and everything in there, actual pictures, it's really interesting.
How do you access the old ones?
You go into PBS,
Yes.
and it will ask you, it'll say channel 2, is this your station? You say yes. And then you look under programs, and it's a group called the American Experience.
Yes, I
And you
watched
just have to
that.
kind of go dig and dig and dig. And when you get to the American Experience, it has a whole list.
Oh, all right.
I mean, there's lots and lots of them. You just have to shuffle through and,
I have a stubby computer.
yeah. Well, it's not, I'm not really great on computers, and I have a.
No, I'm serious, I have a stubby
Yeah.
computer.
So it's-
Or actually,
it's-
it's Bill Gates and
it's-
Microsoft.
It's not a difficult, I mean, it's easily accessible.
Yeah.
You don't have to jump through hoops and sign in and blah, 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 you know, it's easy, they make it easy.
Okay, thank you.
That's interesting.
So let me bring our little session to a close here and say that Mount Rushmore is a tremendous source of inspiration and irritation. There's always a sour note in there somewhere. 1868 is still a source of irritation between us and the Indians. Let's remember in the last 50, 60 years, there's been demonstrations there. They've thrown paint at the statues. They even PISSED on the statues. That's what we're up against, with people who just feel, you know, that things aren't just the way they want it. But, and I hope the same thing doesn't happen with Crazy Horse. Zalewski, once again, the sculptor there, using his own money, as Tony was saying, using his own money to develop that, but they've got a long way to go. And then I'm going to close with a startling figure that threw me. With these statues, 1 inch wears every blank years.
This says 10,000.
Where'd you get that? Did I put that on there?
I cheated.
Oh, you looked at my, did I put that on there?
Yeah, put that on.
Oh, I put that on there. Oh.
You gave it away, Jerry.
You know that Washington's face is 40 feet?
Which one?
Washington, 40 feet.
Is that
right?
all?
Yeah.
Is that all?
Well,
The
if
thing
you
was
figure-
600 feet high. I think it's more
Just
than
his
that.
face.
Yeah. And you know, they were going to put clothes on, more clothes on those
Oh.
front figures, but they didn't have enough money. And that's why I believe you have all that rubble still, because they never spent the money to develop it and even clean it out.
Ah,
The one of Washington, you can see the beginning of the lapels of the coat.
Beautiful work, though.
I know,
They seem so smooth, as though.
Right. but there was a movie made of this, and it was on PBS some years ago, all about Wilson Borglum and the actual work he was doing and how he managed to get it done. He hired people who were
Yeah.
specialists in their field.
Yeah, I think that's the one they put in Time
Yeah.
series now.
Well, I forgot to mention, I think it's interesting, Borglum liked Teddy Roosevelt best.
Really?
That was his favorite.
Ah,
And because they were similar men, you know, they were gung-ho, outspoken,
The big I,
two guys,
capital I.
big cigar.
Yeah, the big capital I.
Yeah. So many interesting people in history, aren't there? So many.
In my young life, I knew two people who had regular contact with Teddy Roosevelt. The one guy lived next door to us when I was just newly married, and he was a chauffeur on the adjoining estate. And he said Teddy Roosevelt used to ride his horse through all the woods and everything, and he would frequently encounter him, and he said he would always stop and talk to you. And he never went past as though you weren't worthy of being addressed. At one time, he said to Teddy Roosevelt that he had a favor to ask, and he said, when your saddle blanket is all worn out, could I have it? And the next day, on the fence, was the saddle blanket. And oh, did he treasure that? Oh my gosh, it had TR in the corner.
Whatever happened to it? You still have it?
No, this was years
Yeah,
ago.
years ago.
I imagine his heirs got it, you
Probably,
know, but, yeah, he loved that. He was an elderly man when I knew him as a young one. Also, my great aunts worked as servants in Long Island, along there, where his Long Island home was.
Oyster Bay.
Oyster Bay, Locust Valley, all along there, along it, yeah. My great aunt said he was such a lovely man. He always treated the servants on the estate so nicely.
And he loved his
You
family.
know, you see him as being so arrogant in some ways,
Yeah.
and yet he always treated them with such respect. I thought that was interesting, an aspect of his personality.
That's nice.
Because he loved his family.
Yeah.
He spent a lot of time with the kids, and so he must have had a lot of heart
Mhm.
in spite of that false bravado, if you
Yeah.
want to call it that. But one of our great presidents. And I think the thing he hated most, I think, was weakness.
Yes.
And he hated to see people not take care of themselves, because he felt that physical strength was so important, but weakness he could not tolerate. And maybe that's why he overreacted.
Well, he was so sickly as a young person.
Yes,
Yeah, that's
yes,
And he had to overcome that.
yes,
I guess.
yes.
Figured if I can do it, so can you.
Tundra has something to say.
Also there, in Rapid City, is an area called Deadwood. Is anybody familiar with that? Deadwood, there's a cemetery there with several, I think Calamity Jane is buried there, and some of those old western cowboys in the cemetery. And when you're talking about Roosevelt, he got stuck in the bathtub there. You know,
Oh,
that's,
yeah. I thought that was
because you
true.
saying about take care of yourself, and I'm thinking, well, he got stuck in the bathtub.
I thought that
And,
was Taft.
I thought it was Roosevelt.
I thought it was Taft, wasn't it?
Taft was 300 some odd
Yeah, he
pounds.
was
heavy.
They had a special bathtub built for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he
And then
required
just-
a lot of assistance getting.
Yes.
Wasn't he the first one that actually had all indoor plumbing in the White House, too?
I think so, could be.
And then, there's a street there, a main street that they've kept it looking very authentic, like in the 1800s, I guess. There's a hotel there that is new, but they've made it look old. And on the wall, in a glass case, they have that white leather wedding dress of the Dances with Wolves when he married the Indian bride.
Oh my.
So that's really pretty. And what else do I
And
remember?
where is that actually, you said?
And near Mount Rushmore, Rapid
In
City.
Deadwoods?
Yeah, called Deadwood, and it's part of the tour. And then you can go to Custer State Park, and there are bison or buffalo roaming free there. It was quite a fun trip.
Oh, good, see all these personal encounters, and that's good.
You know, it's funny, when you mentioned right at the beginning about the sacred land for the Indian, okay, with that treaty, and when all the hoo-ha about the Keystone Pipeline, the Indians, you know, you have to give them credit, they figured out the system, and they are pretty good at beating white men at their own game. What they did was they invoked that treaty, and they said, this is still valid, and this is our land, you can't come through it. And they went to Washington, and they made a big hoo-ha about that.
That's interesting.
You know, it's like they finally, it's kind of like, they got the legalities,
Yeah,
and they just fought like crazy.
I think the word is ceded, C-E-E-D-E-D. And in other words, there are millions of acres they will not
Right.
cede to the U.S. government.
That's
So
right,
they
right.
won't give it up.
They're a nation within a
And
nation.
they have every right to do that. Make casinos if they want to.
Yeah, they don't have federal law because they're not part of the US, they're a separate country within a country.
Yeah.
When you
Well,
live out the west, you see miles.
It's quite a country. What an interesting country we have. So many things have happened and will still happen. I heard a sheriff, maybe you heard him on TV too, and I almost shuddered when he said it. He said every American should be wearing a gun. Did you hear that?
Yes, I
Who
did.
said that?
Yeah.
Who said that?
The sheriff on television.
Oh, yeah, the
On
sheriff,
news.
a
Oh,
lot
the
of
sheriff.
them,
Recently,
a lot of
right.
them on TV said that.
Recently.
Just this last week.
Yeah.
Wasn't it a university president?
I know it.
No, it was a sheriff.
I thought it was a mayor.
And, yeah, there was one that was a mayor,
Mayor,
a police chief,
yeah,
and a
yeah.
sheriff, I mean, they're all
They
over
said
the place.
that they should
And then we have
bolster
all,
up.
and then we have the Republican candidates,
Didn't I say-
don't forget them.
Going back to the cowboy days. You know.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that?
Only American. Of course, we don't know how many in Massachusetts are wearing guns.
I know. My sister lives in Georgia, and she said everybody has guns down there. They even take them to church.
Yeah,
That's part of their heritage.
yeah.
Is that in Georgia, did you say?
Georgia,
Oh.
yeah, down south.
Oh. So
Yeah,
they
it's
have
like
the
that,
same
it's
laws
like
we
that out
have
in the
here.
west. It's, I'll tell you, it's scary when you pull up to a red light and someone pulls up next to you and they think you're a little too close and they point a gun at you.
Mm.
That's real. That happens. Because virtually anyone can carry.
That is scary.
So it is.
Bernie Sanders said he wouldn't deny anybody the right to carry a gun for hunting purposes,
Yeah.
but you don't need an assault weapon to hunt the deer.
If you need an assault weapon to shoot a deer, you're
Yeah,
a lousy
did you know he
hunter.
said that?
Four shot for
Made
you.
a lot of sense.
Mm.
I understand that's why the Japanese never considered land, trying to land here during the war. They flirted with the idea a little bit on the west coast, and then realized that this is such a heavily armed population that they wouldn't have a chance. Way back then even.
Yeah,
They did get as far as the Aleutians though.
yeah.
The very, they did get to the Aleutians, just the very tip of the islands.
Yeah.
There were Japanese there.
Yeah, there's a whole story about, Alaska. During World War II, the Japanese actually landed and there was a troop, there was a group of Americans in the military, and they were led mostly by the natives there, because they knew how to deal with the harsh climate in the winter, and most of them actually froze to death. They did get rid of the Japanese, but it's quite a harrowing story. And it's one of those stories, it's like, they never hear it in US history. You know, I mean, they were actually up there, they were actually off the California coast, and, off the Mexican coast, and the Germans were off the, East Coast,
Yes.
within the 200-mile limit, you know?
Yeah.
But it wasn't talked about at the time, for obvious reasons, and it's never talked about in the history books. It was really close.
Well, we thank you.
So today is not our first rodeo. What's going on today?
Shall we adjourn?
Thank you very much. It was interesting.
Very informative.
Now, the next is January 19th, I don't know about the weather, but the topic will be close calls for Uncle Sam.
Oh, heaven, that's quite a list.
Yeah. I just picked out 3 that I thought were important. And Guantanamo Bay and Bay of Pigs is one of them, Cuban Missile Crisis. Some of those things that came very, very close, too close. Too close. So we'll talk about 3 of those big close calls that Uncle Sam had. Okay, well, thank you for coming, I enjoyed it.
Thank you.